Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Press Lay. I'm here with my guest, Stefan Weitz. Am I saying that correctly, Stefan?
Got it. Yep.
Perfect. Stefan, thanks so much for joining us. I was actually on your website and watched your video, kind of telling us about the story of um, how you came to found Jetson. I thought it was incredibly inspiring. Can you tell our audience, how that came to be and kind of relive that story for us?
Sure. No problem. Yeah. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. So Jetson was born about 3 and change years ago. Born as a result of my having multiple sclerosis for the last 17 years now. And so I was diagnosed with MS and it was my early 30s, like 30, I guess, actually. And it was one of those things where traditional medicine for the first 7 years, it was great in that it modified the disease significantly, didn't let it progress very much, but I felt like hell every single day. Literally, it was like having the flu for 7 years because of all the different therapies that I was on. Again, great doctors, I'm not complaining, but it still sucked. And so I was giving a speech one time, I think it was in Nantucket of all places, and Mark Hyman was ahead of me, who's a really great doctor in the space. And after I got off the stage, he and I were catching up about something else, and he said, I think I can fix your MS. Like, really? I don't think that's not true. It's not really fixable. He said, no, I think I can do it. Come to my clinic back in Lenox, Massachusetts, come for a few days, get all the tests run, talk to the nutritionists, the nurses, the dietitians, everybody, and let's figure out like what's going on with your bodies that the body feels like it has to attack itself every single day. And so I did, went out there and spent a few days with the team, had everything worked up. And finally, at the end, he said, look, here's what we have to go do. You have to cut out certain foods. You have to stop using certain products. You need to really focus on exercise and sleep, drink more water, eat more leafy greens, get your phytonutrients, get your antioxidants, all those sorts of things. And he said, really, the one thing that seems to be very problematic is your gut itself. It's just out of whack, which was a surprise to me because I was a pretty healthy eater to begin with. I wasn't a big processed food guy. I wasn't somebody who binged a lot on really horrible foods, even though they're delicious and amazing, but it was out of whack. And so getting that gut tuned was a real challenge. And I went through a lot of different probiotics, a lot of different regimens, and all of them were either excessively expensive for what they were, totally ineffective, or hard to get. And so I thought, well, gosh, we finally cracked the code. It was great. But I said, look, at the end of the day, if it was this hard for me, who had access to a lot of resources and a lot of people that not everyone else can just go grab, it's going to be really hard for everybody else. So let's go build a product that actually I would want to use myself, which is what Jetson is. So Jetson, really, I built it for myself, and then we happen to sell it to everybody else as well. So that's the genesis behind Jetson. And the last thing I'll say was that one of the insights that I had with Mark in working on my gut was that rotation of probiotics was really important. People think that they want to stick on something for an entire year or 2 years. And the reality is, this is just the truth. Like, we actually don't really know what probiotics are right for you. There's just not, we don't know. Everyone's microbiome is different. Everyone's populations of certain bacteria are different. And so what might work for you may have no effect on me and vice versa. And so, and you can't build a pill today big enough, large enough, with enough bacteria to actually figure out a broad spectrum solution for most people. So this notion of rotation and creating a new pill for each season that leveraged the latest scientific research into what bacteria had what functions on the human body, as well as what people actually needed at certain times of the year, that was the innovation as well, to say, look, we're going to go be the Zara of probiotics, which is a strange thing, I'm saying it out loud. But basically, we're going to go create new formulations every single quarter that makes sense for what science says is important and what the body says it needs. And that was the aha that we had in building this thing early on.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
It's so great hearing it from you kind of live here. I appreciate that you kind of walking us through that, Stefan.
Yeah.
And I'd love just to hear maybe first about your background in building Jetson, but within the context of you as a founding 87 as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I guess, could you tie in, how did you kind of think about your strategy of breaking through kind of the noise in this crowded space of supplements and vitamins?
Yeah, wow. I'll take the last part of the question first, since that was the big challenge. If you look at the space, there are 460 different excuse me, brands out there on the marketplace in this area, which of course is crazy. At that point, who can choose? Who knows what to choose at that point? The reality is, when we got looking at the space, they kind of broke down into really almost two different categories. One was pills that looked like they were in your grandparents' shelf. They were, old 70s looking, mostly retail, probably dead on the shelf. They've been there too long and bacteria doesn't live forever. So there was that kind of category of products. And then there was a category of products which I called like the goop category, which, don't get me wrong, Gwyneth's a great entrepreneur, done a great job, but very, very targeting a particular class of people, like coastal people, generally millennials. They were usually pretty expensive. Many even were quite good, but they were inaccessible really to a lot of people because they were either difficult to get, very expensive, or frankly didn't resonate with the person as they were looking at the site or looking at the product, or was confusing or too much science and gobbledygook that made no sense to most people. So we said, how do we actually kind of up level how do we create a brand for everybody that everyone can feel included in and everyone can understand? And I do a lot of the work to make the science more understandable for people who aren't scientific in nature. And so really trying to say, how can I make a mass populist brand that has the benefit of being highly rigorously studied? I mean, I don't sell anything that doesn't have studies behind it. I won't make anything that doesn't have studies behind it. So these are exceptional products at a price point that is sure higher than what you're going to get at CVS on the shelf, but much lower than, say, a VSL3, which is like also a great product, but 3 times the price. And so we wanted to kind of build something for everybody that was as high quality as these really interesting brands, but was more accessible to everybody out there across the nation.
Got it. And that playbook, and like how you kind of saw the area of opportunity, was this like something you've seen in the past that you've applied to other brands that you've built, or was this like, really kind of your first big move in this area? Maybe asking the question a little bit differently. Were any decisions you made in the kind of starting Jetson, like things that really kept you up at night from a strategic perspective?
Well, for sure. I mean, gosh, that's a great question too. For sure, supply chain was a challenge, even when we started, because imagine trying to rebuild a new formula every 90 days. So lead times on creating a new probiotic could be 8 weeks, and so we're really cutting it close every single quarter as we think about, okay, what does science say? So it's that rush of, okay, I see a new clinical just came out. We look at the research, we talk to the strain manufacturer, we understand if it's even available. We say, yep, let's go ahead and put this in. It makes sense at this point in time. Getting it from wherever, Denmark or Japan or Italy or somewhere in the US, getting it over here, getting it to the blender, making sure the machines are ready to go, running the production run, and doing it every single quarter just in time. That was challenging. At the time, I'm like, why has nobody thought about a seasonal probiotic? It makes so much more sense. And then, of course, you realize this is why the supply chain itself is absolutely ridiculously complex. But that was a big one. What else kept me up? What else have I seen in the space? It wasn't so much that I had seen this particular strategy that we employed here, which is that let's go out towards the mass audience. But I have a history over my career of, especially in technology, being the underdog. So I was one of the guys behind the Bing search engine, which went against Google, and I went against Amazon, a different company that I was at. And so I've always kind of looked at these opportunities to say, okay, look, there's an incumbent in the marketplace. And in this case, the incumbent was the probiotics that were on the shelf for the last 30 years, right? Or these new brands that were not incumbents, but certainly had a very particular audience focus. And I think part of my background has helped me to really understand, let's look for the white spaces that no one's really serving. Who's overlooked? Who's the audience who's not being served well by these existing brands? And that's what we did with Jetson as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that insight. From attacking the white space perspective, I know you've told us your story and how you got to founding Jetson. What are the most common use cases for your customers?
Oh man. Yeah, that is what's probably the most fun about running this company with my CEO George, who actually runs the company every single day, who's phenomenal. Is the number of mails, texts, phone calls that we get in from people whose lives have changed, which is really, it always kind of shocks me a little bit, because I know the power of the gut, I know the power of probiotics, I know what it did for me personally, but it's also interesting to see when other people come in with SIBO or IBS, or frankly just not being able to eat something for the last 15, 20 years, chronic pain, across their body, which is, again, if you have an out of balance or dysbiotic gut, the fact that you can have whole body inflammation because the food's actually leaking out, particles leaking out, causing your body to react in an inflammatory way, that was my problem. It can be really painful. So we see a lot of that. I mean, the reality is with Jetson in particular, and with probiotics in general, the ability to attack particular conditions that people are suffering from is really profound. And it's only in the last, call it 15 years, where there's enough research done to demonstrate efficacy. But for example, we have a skin formulation, which does wonders for people's skin, fine lines, pigmentation, et cetera. We have one for fitness, kind of weight management or body composition. There's one for immune function. There's one for mood. The mood one's actually in season right now, and it's spectacular. The brain-gut axis, the vagus nerve that connects the two, the amount of studies that have been done on probiotic strains that can have demonstrably positive effects on mental health are numerous. And so we see folks coming for a lot of different reasons. A lot of them will stick on it for a year, try them all. Some folks then say, you know what, I do want to be on fit all year round, or I do want to be on mood all year round. And I'm always like, well, okay, of course you can do it, you're the customer, but I'm telling you, also occasionally switch it up a little bit just to get that diversity. But that's what we see. People come for all sorts of reasons, because we continually try to reinforce the fact that the gut is the control center for the human body. And so it can actually do a lot of things. It's not just about digestion or pooping more, which everyone thinks probiotics do. It truly is about everything from how you look, how you feel, how you think, how you behave, how sick or not sick you get. Those are all controlled by this silly little tube beneath your stomach. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That's really interesting. Man, Stefan, I wish we had another hour to dive into the science. Maybe we could do that on another episode.
Sure. Happy
I'm
to.
so curious as to so many different topics you discussed. Kind of this idea of rotation, this idea of kind of taking the latest science and then turning that into your next season of probiotics, but then also these different use cases that you've pulled the research and kind of moved it into an actual product. Really, really fascinating.
Yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah, maybe taking a step back, Stefan, you describe your journey kind of going through, call it, classic Western medicine.
Yeah.
And maybe this question is like obvious or kind of leading, but would you agree or disagree that, today healthcare is too focused on treating versus preventing? And then, just give us your why, one way or the other.
Well, I think to your point, I think it's a fairly well understood question these days by most folks who are of a studied stance in the space. But the reality is the U.S. spends 17% of GDP, almost 20% now because of COVID on healthcare. It's 2x the next. Well, it's not quite true, but it's 9 points above other Western nations with developed healthcare systems. And we all know the outcomes are actually poorer in most cases. And we have become a nation of pill poppers, a nation of people who want to go in to have that magic pill given to them to solve a particular problem. And it's not our fault. I mean, that has been something that has been pushed down across the population for the last 50 years as a result of very, very large pharma spending a lot of money doing great work. Don't get me wrong. I'm not an anti-pharma guy at all. My life was saved from big pharma early on in my disease. So I'm not at all suggesting there's some nefarious motivation here. But there certainly is, because of the advances in science, and then because of what, in some cases, magic pharma companies and science has performed, that has let people believe that most things can be solved in a post hoc manner. So once you have a problem, you go solve it. And in many cases, it can. But in many cases, it can't. And the reality is, even if you can solve it after the fact, it is far cheaper, both from the financial and even emotional toll, to prevent things from happening in the first place. And unfortunately, our healthcare system today, as we all know, is not geared for that type of thing. It takes time to sit down with a person, understand their history, understand their conditions, go through all the testing to figure out what is the optimal path for them. I did it, but it took several days and a bunch of money and a bunch of favors. Like I called in, to go do this. And that's just not realistic for 330 million people across the country with our current model. And you could argue it's not realistic for our population, period, just because of the sheer population we have here in the country. You look at places like Costa Rica, for example, that have a totally different model of medicine, much more focused on community health, community doctors in the communities. The doctors and the health professionals know every single person. They know their vaccination status. They know their pre-existing conditions, et cetera, and they work on attempting to figure out how to prevent things from getting worse. That's their whole system. In our case, of course, it's more you go to the doctor when something's wrong versus going to a coach or someone when you want to optimize kind of your current stasis. So that is the challenge in the country. And unfortunately, I don't see it getting radically better for most people. Certainly people who are health hackers, people who are very interested in learning more, a lot of the new apps that exist out there, whether it's for mindfulness or for diet or for just getting better information about what your body may need based on biomarkers and watches and everything else, that's there. And so certainly for a chunk of the population that have the resources and motivation to do it, it's a whole new world, I think, at this point for people. But for the vast majority of the population, that isn't the case. And I think, unfortunately, there's no easy solution. But hopefully we can begin to kind of move those tools and systems and apps and products more broadly across the population and not just keep it constrained to high net worth folks on the coasts who have access. That would be the ultimate goal for a lot of these companies, is to make sure it's more accessible to everybody who needs it and wants it.
Yeah. Maybe as a follow-on question, Stefan, do you see Jetson, just thinking about that more, your company more specifically, do you see that more on the treat or the prevent side in the long run?
Oh, we're definitely on prevent. I mean, the reality is a probiotic, any probiotic, when you take it, there's no magic feeling that suddenly it's like, oh, wow, I just took a probiotic. Right. It takes a few days for the bacteria to actually colonize and do the work. And it can take, a couple of weeks before you feel something dramatically different. So we're definitely on the prevent. It's because, frankly, you're not going to take it to get better necessarily immediately. That being said, it does make the symptoms. They can make the pills make symptoms lessen or even go away, but it's not because we're covering them up. That's the beauty of actually focusing on the gut first, right? We're actually refactoring what your body actually does. The reality is, your body knows what to do. We just have screwed it up for the last few millennia, where we put the wrong things in. We live in cities, we smoke, we drink, we eat processed foods. Like the body, given its natural choice, the body is remarkably good at managing cell division and managing all the various biological processes that have to happen to keep us alive and functioning and growing and healing. We just have gotten in the way. So if we're able to actually use a product like Jetson to really refocus and reharvest and kind of recultivate that microbiome such that the body can leverage the short chain fatty acids that it creates to rebuild all the various proteins that it needs to generate and regenerate our bodies consistently as we age and as things slough off our bodies in every single day, like that's the magic. So it really is designed to be a protocol and a product that is, again, kind of repopulating the good bacteria in that most important place in your body, in your gut, such that the body can just kind of get on and do what it's supposed to do in the first place. That's the magic.
Makes a lot of sense. I love that the way you described kind of the longer term vision of how this should become a thing that is really preventive, and even in the perspective of the symptom side, you're really treating the underlying issue as opposed to just being a band-aid for the symptom.
You can take Pepto-Bismol, or you can fix your gut, right? You can take well, that's not true. You can take a depression medication, which again, some folks absolutely need, and or you can fix your gut, right? You can maybe eliminate or reduce the things you have to take as a result of having a healthier gut and a healthier brain gut connection. So again, I would never be the one to say that there is not a real need for certain people to have certain medications. That is absolutely a need and is true, and I'm thankful for pharma companies to spend a lot of capital on a very high risk business to create these things. But I would love to see more people actually begin to focus on the things that will prevent those conditions from occurring in the first place,
Hmm.
and do so in a way that's broadly accessible to people across the world.
Yeah. Amazing. Last question for you, Stefan, but I mean, I really feel like I could talk to you for hours.
We do another one. It's fine.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. We have been hearing a lot in the news and kind of seeing on Buoy, a lot of people experiencing long-term COVID symptoms.
Yeah.
Has your team cracked or come close to kind of cracking this code?
Oh my gosh! If we had, we would probably be in a different office at this point. No. No, and part of it's because studies are still really coming in on long COVID. There have been a few attempts at some good definitional work for it to understand actually what it is. We do know that in many cases brain fog is persistent, fatigue can be persistent, but really we're noticing the mental problems seem to happen more often than not with long COVID. Respiratory stuff tends to resolve as does fatigue and the other symptoms that are related common with COVID, but that brain fog is what I keep hearing, what we keep seeing as a pernicious and persistent challenge with long COVID. And there again, I would argue that we have not done specific studies on this at all, because again, it's hard to really get access to the right population to study these things. But we do know that a few things have a dramatic effect on your ability to process and if your brain to function normally. One is water consumption. It sounds crazy, but dehydration, even moderate dehydration, can shrink your brain volume by 1% or 2%, which can have unbelievably harmful effects to your overall cognition, mood, and processing capabilities. So that's a big one. Again, phytonutrients, antioxidants, like again, load up your greens, your reds, your purples, all those types of food, not Jolly Ranchers, fresh fruit and veg. And that'll have, again, tremendous impact. The sleep, we know, again, it's just, you can't overemphasize how important sleep is to the human body for its repair, for cognitive processing, all those things. Sleep is probably the most important thing you can go do. And then again, looking at your gut, looking at how do I make sure that the bacteria that are inhabiting my gut are the ones that have the highest propensity to generate that vagal connection between the gut and the brain, to ensure that you have the highest possible chance for appropriate and positive cognition as you age and as you come out of COVID. So there's not a lot yet, but boy, we know that there's a bunch of core things that you can do that don't cost a lot of money, frankly, and don't require a lot of time, except for sleep, that can have pretty dramatic effects on the outcome, on the symptoms of things like long COVID.
Yeah, that's really actionable advice.
Yeah, simple. And let's not forget exercise too, but that can be hard for some people. But exercise, so 30 minutes of cardio 3 times a week, a little bit of weight training that has really great effects on both male and female bodies as it relates to testosterone and estrogen to create that. All very important things for brain health. But there you go.
I love it. Stefan, in our last minute, where can people find you?
Well, you can come to jetson.health. Pretty simple. You go there, find us there. You can find us on Amazon as well if you want to use Amazon. And you'll be seeing us in retail stores across the nation here fairly shortly. But certainly come visit us, come mail us. I get every email. Our CS teams here in Chicago, they respond to every single email. You can call us, you can talk to us. We love to hear from customers. We actually love it. We have an entire Slack channel just for customer feedback, and it's the highlight of my entire day when I look at the Slack channel every single day. But yeah, come check us out. We'd love to help you out with your gut.
Amazing. Stefan, thanks so much for joining us today, and really appreciate you telling your story, and really excited to follow your journey.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you having me. It's awesome.
Of course. Thanks everyone for joining this episode of Just Press Play. See you guys next time.
See you guys.